W's that journalists attend to, plus 1 H. So the first 4 W's, that is what, who, where, and when, those are very direct. That is what gives us hard news, what is happening. Yeah. That Matiang'i was grilled, what Matiang'i said, where Matiang'i said that. And I think the last W, which is why, and H, who, how, are very critical. Those are not things that journalists are just going to shoot a question to, a newsmaker like Matiang'i or the deputy president and ask why or how. Those are subjects of investigation. So they may not necessarily come out immediately, but now that in the public domain we know what is happening, we are expecting that there's going to be a deep dive into some of these issues. To what extent, did the situation warrant reorganization? What were the critical issues that emerged? How was that decision made? I think that is subject to a lot of investigation, and you can't just get that feedback from a newsmaker. Lastly, let me also say that, I think sometimes Kenyans like reading too much into most of these political issues. And it's not a bad thing to be curious and to read too much, but we need to stick to the pertinent issues. Before we go into the political dimensions of this, we need to ask ourselves, are these the kind of leaders that we want? Are these the things that we want in our leaders? And are these the right questions to ask our leaders? And I think going forward, whether we like it or not, there are so many questions that are going to be asked of the deputy president. There are so many questions that are going to be asked of CS Matiang'i. There are so many questions that are going to be asked around security. And we still depend on those journalists to lead us into the right questions and the right pathways.
Okay, well noted. Yeah.
Now, populist politicians tend to run away from scrutiny. And I can almost bet my head that during the National Assembly hearing, journalists were not given the capacity or opportunity to ask Dr. Matiang'i the questions that one of the panelists desires to be asked. And the same obtains at presidential functions and even for William Ruto's functions. Wherever they're having a very critical issue that needs national attention, what these politicians will do is, as soon as they're done with their presentation, they would surround themselves with their security, so journalists have no opportunity to ask questions. That is not limited to Kenya. A few days ago in the US, when Joe Biden was doing a news conference and Afghanistan was a disaster, he came addressed journalists and he didn't take a single question. Yeah. And as the professor has indicated, now it's incumbent on investigative journalists to go and look at the hippo's nose. So it may be prudent every single day to blame journalists for lack of rain, but let's also understand that these populist politicians have created a bubble they don't want to operate outside.
Okay, well noted. We'll definitely get into that particular conversation. But as we do that, let's take a look at how the deputy president fired back as he came out to clarify on the particular assets he owns in the country. As he was speaking in reference to what the Interior CS had to say in Parliament, the deputy president said he owns only 70% of what the cabinet secretary told members of Parliament on Wednesday. The DP cited ADC Mutara Ranch as one of the properties he does not own. And as if mocking the cabinet secretary, Ruto went further to state that some properties that were not mentioned by Matiang'i during Wednesday's meetings with members of Parliament. And as Chris Thyro reports, the deputy president now wants the Interior CS to go ahead and conduct lifestyle audit for other leaders. Listen in.
A day after Interior CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i revealed a list of 10 properties associated with Deputy President William Ruto and the number of security officers who provide round-the-clock surveillance for him, the DP has come out to clarify that indeed 70% of what was listed was correct. According to Matiang'i, the DP owns Kitengela Gas, Western Hotel, Murombe Farm in Transmara, Narok County, that is 1,000 acres, ADC Laikipia, Mutura Ranch, 15,000 acres, Dolphin Hotel in Mombasa, built on a 3 hectares, and Mata Farm in Taita Taveta.
Watu wa OP wamekuja juzi, waka-improve ile ilikuwa imefanywa na magazeti. Sasa wameondoa vitu vingine hata haikuwa yangu, walikuwa wamesema 680, wameondoa hiyo kwa sababu ilikuwa uongo. Wameondoa Boulevard, ilikuwa uongo. Lakini sasa waliongeza ingine kidogo ambaye sio yangu, pengine nitawasaidia. Kwa sababu kwa properties 10 waliandika about 70% ni true, ile ingine si ukweli. Kama ile wanisema ati mimi niko na 10,000 acres huko ya ADC, mimi sina. So hiyo waende watoe.
However, according to Ruto, Matiang'i and his team should do their homework well.
Niwasaidie kidogo. Walisahau pia kuweka shares. Niko na shares 400,000 ya Safaricom. Wangeweka hiyo. Na pia wangeweka kama kuna askari pia wanalinda huko. Wangeongeza hiyo. Kumbe niko na shares tena 80,000 ya Kenya Airways. Hiyo pia wangeongeza.
According to Ruto, who was meeting a delegation from Nakuru County at his official residence in Karen, he makes a cool 1.5 million shillings on a daily basis through his poultry farming.
Na tena walisahau kusema ile biashara yangu ya kuku, niliona wanaandika acreage. Sasa pale wangeandika iko kuku 1,200. Na wangesema huyu mtu anauza mayai 150,000 every day, shilingi 1.5 million. Hiyo wangeweka namna hiyo. Alafu wangemalizia waende wa bank wajue wako na pesa ngapi na iko loan kiasi gani. Sasa ndio wangemalizia hapo kwa hiyo lifestyle audit.
Ruto, who equated Matiang'i's revelations to his lifestyle audit, he dismissed assertions that they will not dent the hustler narrative associated with him.
Na hustler haitakuwa vita kati ya watu maskini na tajiri. So wametusaidia katika hiyo kufafanua ya kwamba huyu William Ruto sio mtu maskini, ako na mali. Na yeye ni hustler. Kumaanisha sio lazima uwe maskini ndio ukue hustler. Hustler ni kumaanisha unaweza kupanda ngazi uende juu.
Other properties that were listed among his properties include a private residence in Elgon View, Eldoret, Koitalel Poultry Farm in Eldoret, private residence in Koisachi, Eldoret, and Kwale Island Development Limited, Wilson Airport that has 2 hangars and 5 helicopters.
Hii hustler narrative is about the Kenya of possibilities.
And now Ruto wants the lifestyle audit extended to other political leaders. Meanwhile, Interior CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i has left the country for Zambia. Matiang'i left the country a day after revealing DP Ruto's wealth in what appears as another coded message by President Uhuru Kenyatta, who sent him with a message to President Hakainde Hichilema. Part of the message was to ask the Zambian president to support Kenya's candidate for the post of Secretary General for the Commonwealth of Nations Defense, CS Dr. Monica Juma. Chris Dairo, KTN News.
All right, Thairo paints a picture of what happened after in terms of the clapback from the deputy president. Now, Echesa, apart from the 70%, 30%, let's talk about what perhaps wasn't mentioned right there. Was this a blow to the hustler narrative in any way you look at it? And perhaps was his defense warranted?
I think by exposing what William Ruto owns, the CS was trying to cement the hustler nation towards William Ruto. They will be happy if the chief hustler is that rich, so that he brings the hustle down to them and they have a bite. But both Matiang'i and William Ruto were doing politics in their communication. Politics is about communication and how you package your message. So we'll realize that Kenyans did not take Matiang'i's revelation about what William Ruto owns with the seriousness that it deserved. They ought to have asked, where did William Ruto get this property? Which avenues? Is it through looting or just sheer hard work? But William Ruto, in communicating back, reassured Kenyans that other than being the deputy president, being a hustler, I'm also a Kenyan entitled to own property, and this is what I own. In fact, the CS did a shoddy job. He mentioned what I don't own, and I own it. He mentioned something and attributed it to me, but I don't own it. So he was helping him to do the lifestyle audit. So in my opinion, I think people who are on a mission to destroy William Ruto are giving him ammunition to develop and cement his political constituency. They are not finishing him. They are building him. The more they appear to be frustrating him and frustrating his efforts, the more they are cementing his political constituency and even winning more Kenyans who are now becoming more sympathetic to him. The best way to destroy William Ruto, in my opinion, was to use politicians and not bureaucrats. If you give William Ruto a crowd here and give Fred Matiang'i the same crowd, William Ruto will run with that crowd because he's an accomplished political tactician. You can't use bureaucrats to fight William Ruto.
Is the tactic counterproductive, Dismas?
Well, you know, first of all, I'm amused on the trajectory taken by Echesa. What Matiang'i revealed at the National Assembly, it was not a lifestyle audit. It was the number of security guards manning various installations or assets or properties owned by the Deputy President. He did not purport to do a lifestyle audit, and I doubt whether that ministry has got capacity to do a lifestyle audit. However, we must now demand that a lifestyle audit becomes a best practice in Kenya, so that we stop asking ourselves questions. Like, for instance, it may be interesting to establish what was the net worth of William Samoei Ruto when he took office as the Deputy President for the first time and now. And we look at the graph, whether it's grown up or whether it's, rather whether it's gone north or south, and ask ourselves that if it's grown up, does the same apply to Mura, Nanjiko, Wafula, or is it that for him he's got special skills in managing his business, but not in managing state affairs? We need to ask that question. And then number two, because it's now, they've opened a Pandora's box, then we need to ask ourselves, to what extent do elected leaders and people with executive authority, the president and his deputy, and cabinet ministers as well as governors, take policy decisions that directly affect their bank balances? Like, for instance, let's look at the reforms in the energy sector, the last mile connectivity. Is the principal beneficiary Mura, who gets power connected to a grass-thatched house, a mud-thatched house, and is unable to pay the units? Or in this chain, there are some people who are beneficiaries. And then we go back and ask ourselves, how come we have some monopolies in Kenya in the energy sector making losses? So that's what we need to ask, that during the Jubilee administration, whose two principal shareholders is President Kenyatta and William Samoei Ruto, the policies they've taken, the policies they've generated, do they serve their selfish interests or do they serve the general will of the public? And in my view, we must demand that anybody now wants to become a leader must subject himself to public audits, because there must be conflict of interest. Because if, for instance, Dr. William Samoei Ruto is a very successful businessman, it means that he's got some skills which has deployed to grow his business, but the same are not visible in the management of Kenya. And this shouldn't be limited to William Samoei Ruto. You know, wherever there is, like for instance, a few months ago, when COVID came to Kenya, we were told of an animal called Kemsa, and a number of millionaires and billionaires were generated. The energy sector has generated millionaires and billionaires. The agriculture sector has generated millionaires and billionaires. And these are people who become billionaires and billionaires not because they harness the factors of production, as we know businessmen are supposed to do, but because of these policy decisions. I think that is the Pandora's box. Now, going back to what one of the panelists has been talking about, maybe that's where the investigative journalists need to go. And maybe force these people to open up. Maybe one of these gentlemen, the top lawyers, they should go to court and now we lift that lead. The wealth declaration forms which are never made public. It would be very interesting, especially to look at the ones of the top Jubilee leaders when they were sworn into office and today, to find out how the trajectory has been. So that when they say tuko pamoja, we actually understand tuko pamoja.
Okay, so Owila, as you add your voice to this, was this a lifestyle audit from where you sit? And perhaps does this warrant an extension to other leaders? Because the DPs, why always me, you know?
Not in any way, Jesse. I'll tell you the truth. The direction that Tanga would want to take, and every other sympathizer of the Deputy President, and I agree with them, because this is politics, is to drive this conversation towards a lifestyle audit. And we've seen all the lieutenants of the Deputy President talk about that. But I can tell you that is misdirecting Kenyans, and there is also a way in which they want to, focus journalists to that direction. And that is not the direction. This is not a lifestyle audit. That is not what CS Matiang'i did. And it is wrong to even lie to Kenyans that that was the intention. This was a security issue. And we need to ask ourselves, to what extent are we addressing the security issues that occasion the rearrangement, the redeployment, or withdrawal, whichever way you want to look at it? That should be the focus, because there could be a serious security threat, not just to Kenyans, but to the deputy president who has the mandate from Kenyans. And that is what should be investigated. So when we talk about how do we move with this going forward, we should not be diverted to a lifestyle audit. I mean, that's a totally different animal. If you want a lifestyle audit, that's a conversation that Kenyans can have. But the bottom of this should take us to why was there a redeployment? Who was misusing the security that was assigned to the deputy president? Who should be held culpable? That is the direction that we need to move with this. And I can tell you for free that whatever Matiang'i talks about, the issue of sympathizers, politicians who are looking for sympathy, they've realized that there is an extent to which you can cry wolf. And there is a limit to which Kenyans can agree to you, with you, that you are being persecuted, you are being frustrated. There is an extent, and I think we've reached that extent. And what they are intending to do is to divert. The critical issues, let us start from the flight to Uganda. Let us trace it back to the Turkish businessman. And let us come back to the security, because all these things are intertwined. And that is why we are saying it is not a question of politicians driving this narrative. We live in a very mediatized society. The only way we are going to get to the bottom of this is through the public trust that we've bestowed on the media and journalists. And you see, irrespective of how we want to look at it, journalists will not tell us the stories that we want. Journalists will tell us the stories that are of interest to the public. And I think that is the direction that the media needs to take, go deeper into these issues, establish the interconnections, and find out what exactly informed this redeployment, to what extent was it a security threat to the deputy president, and to what extent was it compromising the interests of Kenyans as far as security is concerned, and then redefine the whole idea of why would we want to protect an individual and his private interest if that protection in itself compromises the greater good of Kenyans. I think that is the direction we need to take, and no one should lie to us that it is a security, it is a lifestyle audit. When Kenyans were in demand of lifestyle audits, these same politicians said no. So if inadvertently, their bubble has been burst, they should not lead us into a direction that we don't need to go. There's a germane issue that is a security issue.
Yes.
Yeah. Sure.
This panel, in just a roughly counting, the panel is made up of 12 degrees. The people seated here, roughly 12 degrees. And I think mendacity is the last thing we want to entertain in an array of people with such a deep intellectual rigor. When Matiang'i talked about William Ruto owning 2 hangars with 5 helicopters, if you have studied language, you know some of these things. The detail of 5 helicopters, was it part of security? When they talked about Mutara farm, why wouldn't he stop at Mutara? 15,000 hectares or something. When they talked about his farm in Sugoi, there is something interesting. Why will I talk about the farm in Sugoi? I'm a neighbor to that farm. That is where William Ruto resides in a normal day. So, in his home, he has, let's say, an acre of sugarcane plantation. If they are guarding his home, why will they say they are guarding sugarcane? And that is where Dismas lives. At times, we need to be serious. Secondly, when we say Matiang'i was not playing politics, let me ask you a simple thing. We know how security is handled worldwide. Best practice, those things are done in camera. Did you see the bravado? That was a Kieleweke kind of a committee. From Junet, Fatuma Gedi, what is the name of the MP from Homa Bay Town?
Honorable Kaluma.
Honorable Kaluma. That was a proper Kieleweke setup. What missed were crowds and chants. But let us come back to the germane issue. If we are to discuss security, and for a simple reason, I don't know why we fear subjecting our politician to lifestyle audit. Let it be done. Let Uhuru Kenyatta take the first line, because he is our first employee. Let the second employee, William Ruto, take the line. Let the other employees follow in suit, because we are the bosses. And Hezbollah Willa should not shy away. We want lifestyle audit to be done because they manage our resources. Kama mtu ameongeza kuku, atuambie aliongeza kuku. Kama mtu lita ya maziwa zimeongezeka Brookside, Uhuru Kenyatta atuambie waziwazi, this is the magic I use in Brookside, let us transplant the magic to KCC. If that is the magic happening in NCBA, let it be translated to National Bank. Let us go back.
Yeah.
No, that one was an illustration, but let us go back to the germane issue. Yeah. The germane issue is the politicization of security.
Okay.
And the risk is one. If we said William Ruto is misusing 256 policemen, 257 policemen. We have now removed GSU. Are we saying AP? Who pays AP? Jesse? No, we need to be critical. Who pays GSU, AP? It is the taxpayer. So are we saying those ones are allowed to be misused? If we do not go and delve into the question of misusing police, are we saying now we have given William Ruto AP, he can do all he wants with them? No, the question is, Matiang'i needs to answer the last question, which is, if there is misuse, who has taken responsibility? And why are you adding this person who is misusing police, more human resource in the name of AP? Or those ones do not matter if they are misused?
A critical question. Echesa, as we finalize, it's a Pandora's box, as you see, yeah?
Yes. Yeah. What I wanted to say is that my brother Hesbon and Dismas understood the CS to have been on a very noble mission. I too may have understood the CS to have been on a very noble mission, but I didn't. What we should be asking ourselves is not what Matiang'i told Kenyans while at Parliament, but what Kenyans understood Matiang'i to be telling them. Matiang'i might have been briefing Kenyans about the security reorganization in the office of the Deputy President. However, Kenyans understood Matiang'i to have been doing a lifestyle audit on the person of the Deputy President. And that is why politically the Tanga wing is able to positively run away with this narrative and add to their value.
You remember at the beginning of the conversation we spoke about toxic politics. Yeah. That politics has been played by the DP's office. You remember some letters addressed to public servants of rank, which were supposed to be confidential, found their way to social media first, instead of going to the direct offices. So they've played toxic politics to the issue of the DP security, and the same applies with the office of the president. All of them have played toxic politics, because all of them, what they're striving to do is to get, for lack of a better word, sympathy for the next election. So we cannot blame either party. But when you look at now the crystal ball, where does this leave morale? Because when you're playing toxic politics with the security of the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, that is a threat to our national security. Because in the unlikely event, or if something happens to his security, that can be a recipe for disaster. But you have his sycophants and allies, as well as on the opposing camp, doing toxic politics. Now, you know, there's a lot of fake news, there's alternative facts, there's lies and deceit, to the extent that now Murad doesn't know, who do I believe? Do I believe the DP Ruto who says that I don't even care for these guys, give me G4S? Or do I believe Matiang'i who says that these guys are guarding chicken? So maybe they're actually guarding chicken, not even the Deputy President's residence. So who do we believe? And in my mind, one of these two politicians is lying to us. You remember the prior Sunday, it was either President Kenyatta or Ruto was lying. Now this time round, it's Ruto or Matiang'i. One of them is lying. And who is this lying? And if they're lying, how does that place them in the context of Chapter 6? Is there integrity in their conversations? Because you see, the people who admire the Deputy President Ruto get nervous when they hear that he doesn't have security. The people who admire Matiang'i get nervous when they see Tanga associates and sycophants attacking him every day. But at the end of the day, how does Kenya's economy grow when these two powerful politicians are throwing stones at each other?
Okay, interesting. Anyway, let's take a short break on that particular note. It seems it's about to get messier, and we'll definitely monitor the developments right here on Inside Politics. As we come back, we'll shift focus to the mountains. So many strategies in terms of politics of coalitions and formations when it comes to regions. We'll